Creativity is thinking up new things. Innovation is doing new things. It's my privilege to welcome the resource person of the day, Dr. Gundupagi Manjunath, Principal, Reddy Institute of Management Science, Adoni, to the session on problem-based learning. Hearty welcome to you, sir. I take this opportunity to welcome our head of the department, Professor Vijay Kumar R, to the national level FDP. Hearty welcome, sir. I also welcome all faculty coordinators of FDP, participants from various institutions, and faculty members to the session. Now I request Mr. Kenneth, Faculty of Commerce UG, to introduce the keynote speaker.
Dr. Gundupagi Manjunath is presently working as a professor and principal in Bheemi Reddy Institute of Management Science, Adoni, Kurnool District, Andhra Pradesh. Sir previously worked in the Oxford College of Business Management, Bangalore, and Adarsh College, Chamrajpet. Sir has also worked with companies like India Infoline, Thomson Reuters, and Access Build Zone, and has served in the education sector in various academic roles for over 15 years. It is indeed a privilege to have you as the guest speaker for this session, sir. I now request you to take over the session.
Thank you, sir, for introducing me. Shall I share the screen, ma'am?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. You can share the screen.
Co-host.
You're the co-host, sir.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am. And share the screen. Very good morning to all the members who joined. I thank Kristu Jayanti College. I thank Aarti Singh ma'am for giving me an opportunity. I'm always happy to be associated with the Kristu Jayanti College. I have to appreciate the team rightly selected the opt title for the faculty development. And today I will be talking on problem-based learning. Most of the instructors, we will be using different kinds of pedagogy in different disciplines. Sometimes certain methodologies may be applied to a particular discipline, but here also, if we observe, there is a lot of difference in the traditional learning as well as the problem-based learning. Before getting into the problem-based learning, if we understand, actually, because identifying the problem itself is very difficult, and framing a problem for the students' discussion purpose is not possible in all the disciplines. Nowadays, if we take even in the environmental sciences, especially in the medical education, the application of this methodology is widely used. As say from the business management disciplines, what we will be doing, the instructor will be using the real world problems to promote the student learning. So here, see, there is no proper definition where I can talk about what is actually the problem-based learning, because most of the research has been done and the application of this methodology on various disciplines is different. But the application of the PBL, because we follow certain procedures, we follow certain methodology if we want to apply the problem-based learning. If you take any subject, in any subject we can adopt the problem-based learning. Only the thing is that we require creativity. Because why creativity is required? When we observe the problem, there are some core problems which will be different from discipline to discipline. So here, as an instructor, we should ensure that the problem must motivate students. The problem must motivate the student to seek out a deeper understanding of the concept. Because the problem require certain decisions to be made, because the students they have to defend them. Because how they will defend, because when we are giving the complex problem, how students are defending that and how students are solving the complex problem matters a lot. Because sometimes in the problem-based learning, student, even instructor, sometimes instructor also involved in the problem-solving process. If we observe the domains of the knowledge, psychomotor domain skills, generally we observe in the engineering stream, because most of the students, they have to what they have to do is they have to showcase their domain skills, especially in the labs. We are giving a problem to the students in the lab also, and we are trying to ask how you are going to solve the problem. But see, learners, we can't guarantee that learners they have the complete knowledge about the problem. Sometimes being a learner, they have to do some research work, or they have to understand what actually the problem is. That's why in my first concept, first we will try to identify the difference between the problem-based learning and the traditional learning. So the first one, learning approach. When it comes to the learning approach, in the learning approach, when we observe the traditionally, how we are doing in the classroom is, we are following a structured curriculum with different lectures. Sometimes we will be referring certain textbooks, and most of the time in the traditional learning, teacher-led instruction will be there, because here only students are receiving the information from the instructors. But in the problem-based learning, it is not like that. Why? Because here we are giving a real world problem, realistic problem, or sometimes we'll be giving the realistic situations, and students has to form small groups, and they have to identify what actually the problem, and how the problem evolved, and how we can solve. So there is some procedure involved in identifying the solution for this problem, and most of the time in the problem-based learning, the students are very active, and this will develop the self-directed learning. So that's when it comes to the learning approach, this one major difference we can observe. The second one, when it comes to the content delivery. See, generally in the traditional learning, what is happening, how we are delivering the content? We are delivering the content through the lectures. Sometimes we'll ask the students to read some chapters, or to read certain in the form of assignment. Sometimes we prepare the presentation. Sometimes we prepare the student presentation where students, they themselves, by going through the PowerPoint, they learn themselves. So this, because when it comes to the content delivery in the traditional learning, there is a predetermined sequence that we can observe in the traditional learning. Predetermined sequence. That means first we'll be going through the introduction, then we'll get into the concept, then we'll talk about in depth of the concept, then we close the session. But here, when it comes to the problem-based learning, always here the learner intend to solve the problem. In the problem-based learning, when we have created a small group of students to solve the problem, if we observe closely, what they will be doing is they will be trying to discover the content which is related to that problem first. Then they will try to solve the problem. Because here in this methodology, motivation, we can observe the motivation, self-directed motivation among the students, which can be observed very clearly in the problem based. Because when student is trying to get the information, he is doing lot of research, he is gathering lot of content, and he is gathering certain facts. So through this, what he is doing is trying to solve the problem. So in this approach, we can identify the student with the self-motivation and the education, what he is getting through the problem solving, it is more valuable to the student because it will be there throughout his life, because it will be there, because that becomes a learning from internally they are learning. With a lot of motivation, they themselves, self-directed learning, I can say very clearly, self-directed learning. So, learning approach wise, content wise, there is a lot of difference in the problem-based learning and the traditional learning. So what is the role of the teacher? When it comes to the traditional learning, we know. I don't need to talk more on this role of the teacher in the traditional learning, because in the traditional learning, teacher is playing a central role when it comes to the information or accessing the students or managing the classroom. Teacher is playing a crucial role in the traditional learning. But in the problem-based learning, what is the role of the teacher? As I told you initially, sometimes though we are the teachers, we have to involve ourselves in the process of learning along with the students. Because our role is to guide the students. Sometimes students, they don't find the resources. Very difficult for them to find the resources. So that time, being a facilitator, being a motivator, being a teacher, we have to provide. We have to provide the resources, or sometimes we have to show where the resources are available, how you can, if not, you teach them how to create the resources. Offer your complete support in learning the in solving the problem. So when it comes to the role of the teacher, I'll say compared to the traditional learning, the major role, if we observe in the problem based learning, if we are applying the problem based learning methodology, then our role will be very crucial, because we are not only giving the problem, we are guiding them, we are supporting them, we are motivating them, and many aspects we will be with them. And in certain studies, if we observe, the faculty has involved completely with the students in solving the problem. The fourth one, problem solving and the critical thinking. So critical thinking, especially if you observe in the traditional learning, problem solving skills also we can develop in the traditional learning. Critical thinking skills also we can develop in the traditional learning. But the traditional learning is giving the knowledge how you can apply the learning to the real world problem. But in the problem based learning, the methodology, the pedagogy itself is designed to promote the problem solving and critical thinking skills. Why? Because whatever it is, if we want to teach a particular concept in the classroom, if we want to teach any program or anything, whatever we want to teach, what we are doing is we are framing that in the form of a problem, and we are asking the students to solve the problem. That's how this problem based learning as well as traditional learning, we can observe these skills. But collaboration is the one point which we don't observe most of the times in the traditional learning, because in the traditional learning, what instructor is doing, individually we are giving certain work to the students, individually we are giving assignments, and individually we are assessing the students' performance. Where is the scope for the collaborative skills? Because in the problem based learning, we are, first of all, the instructor is forming the students in a small group. So through this, we are encouraging the teamwork, we are encouraging the collaboration among the students, and the student starts working to solve the problem with the help of the communication between the teams as well as between the individuals. So this pedagogy definitely will improve the problem solving skills as well as communication skills, interpersonal skills, because as an individual, he is communicating with the group, and communication is there between the teams. So this is where we are learning diverse skills, especially in the problem based learning. When it comes to the assessment, see how it is very difficult to assess, especially in the problem based learning methodology. The reason is, the student has solved the problem and the student has given the solution. When the student has given the solution for a particular problem, because in a classroom we have created some 4 to 5 small groups. When we have created 4 to 5 groups, they solve the problem, but their solutions are different. Then how you are going to assess? Because in the traditional learning, common assessment will be there. Sometimes we will be using the rubric. Based on the rubric, we will be evaluating the student's performance. We will be evaluating the individual performance of the student. But group performance, how you are going to evaluate the group performance, that becomes very difficult, and especially in the problem based learning, we have to come up with a rubric which is having different criteria, especially related to the groups or teams instead of individual, because the group has to perform, the group has to solve the problem, the group has followed the procedures or not. So how we are going to evaluate? We are going to evaluate with the help of the group, especially a rubric which is developed exclusively for the teams. Say for example, project based learning is there. In the project based learning, 2 to 3 students are combinedly they are doing a project. And how we are evaluating the project? We are evaluating the project. We are not evaluating the student performance there. But here we have to evaluate the student performance, because how they have solved the problem, what are the steps they have followed in solving the problem, what kind of solutions they have given to solve that problem, and what kind of material they have referred, or what kind of research they have done, how much time they have taken. So all these aspects we have to consider. So in this assessment, especially assessment, because the application, if we follow the, even yesterday Geeta ma'am was talking about the Bloom's taxonomy. After class, before class, when class is going on. So before class also, the facilitator will be working on the problem, in framing the problem. When the class is happening, the students in the form of the group, they will be performing. After the class, the students, some other teams will be learning why we have not adopted this method to solve the problem. So when it comes to the engagement, student engagement, so how often, especially how in the traditional learning, how we are engaging the students? We are motivating the students, right? There are so many factors which will influence the students, especially in the traditional learning. Suppose if the student is very much interested in that subject, definitely the instructor is successfully engaging the student. Suppose the interest is not created, or sometimes students are not interested, because when I'm taking some classes, few students they used to tell, sir, it's very dry subject. But how we can make that very interesting, how we can engage, especially in the problem based learning, as it is associated with the higher levels of engagement. High level of engagement is required in the problem based learning methodology. Suppose if you want to adopt and apply this problem based learning, you require high levels of student engagement. Otherwise it's not possible. Why? Because being as instructor as a facilitator, instructor as a guide, instructor as a teacher, instructor as a crafter of the problem, instructor as a facilitator will be involving in the complete process of the problem based learning. That's why if we are planning to adopt this methodology in our teaching, ensure that the instructor is engaging the student, and his uh, what I say, his commitment towards the mm, solving the problem, his commitment towards the support of the students, very much required. But in traditional learning, that much high levels is not required. But in the problem based learning, high levels of the student engagement is required. Even yesterday in flipped learning also, we have seen how the students are engaged in the flipped classroom. But in the problem based, when you are applying the problem based learning, how you are engaging the students is very important. because at every stage, facilitator has to be with the learner. So these are the 7 basic points. Many more are there, but as rightly, these are the major points that we can identify. And when it comes to the traditional learning, problem based learning and the traditional learning, this what we can observe, because in the traditional learning most of the times we are giving the information, and we are asking the students to memorize that information, and then you will application of that knowledge. Bloom's taxonomy, according to the Bloom's taxonomy, the 5 levels of the 5 levels we can apply. But in the problem based learning, we are assigning a problem directly. We are assigning a problem to the student, and they have to solve the problem. So students should be in a position to identify lot of information required to solve the problem. Sometimes they won't find the resources, so how they have to get the resources to solve the problem, because when problem is given, if right resources are available, learners will solve the problem very easily. But as we are taking some real world examples or real world problems, how we are going to solve that problem. That's why they need lot of resources, they need lot of information. If you observe even technology, integration of the technology in the problem based learning, integration of the technology is also very high. Why? Because having a requirement of lot of resources to solve the problem. So at the end of the day, so student will be learning the information, and he knows how to apply, and he knows how to solve the problem. But here in the traditional learning, what's happening generally, if you follow the Bloom's taxonomy also, in the traditional learning, we are just testing the skills, whether student is in a position to complete the lab assignment or not. So how far he has completed, up to that only we are assessing the student performance. But in problem based learning, because in the process of solving the problem, he acquired many skills, he acquired knowledge, he acquired the information, and also he applied successfully, he applied and he solved the problem. That's the outcome. That's the outcome, and this outcome is really playing a vital role in the students' learning journey itself, because the students are learners who are learning through the problem based learning approach. Definitely they have that knowledge or learning in their mind throughout their life. They'll not forget. But yes, when it comes to the traditional learning or problem based learning, I can say that both are the approaches we are following. But if we observe, especially in the medical schools or medical colleges, this problem based learning approach is very high, because each problem in the form, because they'll be having so many cases, so each case for them is a problem, and each problem for them it will be unique, and the same problem is given to the entire class to solve the problem, and the teacher as a facilitator. So how they are solving the problem? So in certain disciplines, very frequently the application of problem based learning methodology we can observe. But in management, in business studies, sometimes in the literature studies, how we are going to apply is a challenge to the instructors, because the instructor has to develop the problem statement. So that's where the importance lies when you are applying the PBL, problem-based learning methodology. So at this point of time, I can clearly say that there is some difference. There is some difference when it comes to the traditional learning, when it comes to the problem-based learning. But that small change which can be observed in terms of the process, because in traditional learning, we are not following a particular process, but when it comes to the problem-based learning, we have to follow a particular process. Coming to the problem-based learning, because this approach, if we observe problem-based learning approach straight away, we didn't get, because most of the educational institutions, most of the organizations, if we observe how they have implemented this problem-based learning, how they have what I say, how they have used these models. Maybe say the first model, McMaster model, if we observe, which is considered as the first model in the problem-based learning approach, the first model developed by the McMaster University, which has highlighted and which has given more importance to the self-directed learning. Self-directed learning, collaboration is there, problem solving is there, and moreover it is a student-centered instruction. So if we observe all the models, the problem-based learning models, one or the other point which is very unique, that we can observe. Say for example, Maastricht University has developed the 7-jump model. That means they have given the model which comprises of different steps. That means definitely if you want to apply the problem-based learning model, you have to apply the 7-step approach. 7-step approach. That means they have developed this model, they have successfully implemented, they applied in their curriculum also. That's how they have named it as 7-jump model. Illinois University has developed the PBL model. Please, ma'am, mute that participant. Right, thank you. Illinois University, their model is basically developed based on the self-directed learning. So each model, if we observe, they have developed their models, but common thing we can observe is one or the other skill that we are learning, the learners are learning, team-based learning model. Even there is a PBL model where we can apply this team-based learning, especially in the team-based learning, collaborative learning. We can apply this, and collaboration, because when I say team, collaboration is required between the teams, collaboration is required between the instructor as well as the learner. Hybrid model, the concentration was there on the content, as I discussed in the earlier point. because in the problem-based learning, content is also placed, content delivery of the content or requirement of the resources plays a vital role. So in the hybrid problem-based learning, being an instructor or sometimes facilitator, we will be giving that content and student will go through the content and learner will apply what content is required, how much content we have to take to solve the problem. So in the hybrid problem-based learning model also, we are here in this model also, the learner will be learning the problem solving skills. Online problem-based learning. See, yesterday we have seen in the flipped classroom also, there are various digital tools. Even if we observe the Bloom's taxonomy, digital tools are there. Digital Bloom's taxonomy. We are applying the digital tools. That means even for the problem-based learning also, for PBL also, we can apply certain digital tools, such as digital tools. Say, for example, identification of the or sometimes content, or sometimes writing. So there are writers are available, AI writers are available. So whatever it comes to your mind, you just explain, the AI writer will write your idea. Specifically, it will give you the output also. So we are using certain digital tools. We are using certain digital tools even in the problem-based learning. So that is one model. Simulated PBL model. That means artificially we are creating certain simulations. This is one of the, especially if we observe certain IITs, they have some simulated learning environment. Say IIT Bombay, they have created virtual labs. IIT Bombay, they have this virtual lab. Virtual labs are available. So instructor is giving a problem statement and learner, instead of doing the experiment in the lab, virtually he is doing the experiment, because lot of opportunities are available for the learner to mix and match with the values and calculations, whatever it means. There is a possibility. So in the simulated problem-based learning, what is happening? The instructor is controlling the environment. Yeah, instructor is controlling the environment. That means in the simulated environment, everything is determined. Everything is determined. That means the control will be there with the instructor, and how the learner is solving the problem in the simulated environment. So instructor will be watching that particular group, and instructor will come to know in how many ways they are solving the problem. So the competency based problem based learning, competency. The intention is only one thing, to develop the competencies among the learners. So one is good at negotiation, one is good at writing, one is good at researching. So what are the learners' competencies here? So researching, writing, or solving the problem. So these competencies are developed especially in this model, and that's why we are calling that as a competency based model. These other models are also available, but these are the major models. If we observe throughout the world, most of the educational institutions, instructors, following different models, problem based learning only, but different models. So for example, we have online. So if there is an online program, ma'am, please mute the audio. Right, thank you, ma'am. So among these models, there are other models also, but if you observe, so certain models, contemporary models like hybrid model, online model, simulated model, contingency model is also available. Contingency, that means based on the different situations, also how, based on the different situations, how the learner and instructor is learning, how this instructor and learning their learner, they are let me say one example, especially contingency. Suppose instructor has identified a situation in the classroom itself, and instructor has crafted that situation as a problem, and learners, they are aware of that problem, but when it comes to the solving the problem, because the other learners, they may not be knowing, that this problem has been crafted from the situation what happened exactly in the classroom. So contingency, based upon the situations, based on the different situations, we will be applying that model, contingency PBL model. Like that, we have various models available where we can apply in the teaching learning process. As I told you, you take any PBL model, just a minute, important.
Hello, Manjunath sir. Hello.
Yeah, ma'am. Sorry, ma'am.
It's okay, sir.
Emergency.
Oh,
call.
it's okay.
Yeah, problem-based learning, when it comes to the steps. So if you are adopting, if you are applying this problem-based learning as a pedagogy in your classroom, you take any PBL model, this particular approach is required, and certain steps we need to follow if we want to adopt and apply the problem-based learning in the class. The first stage is identifying the problem, because most of the time students go through the problem. If they go through the problem also, they may not understand the problem. Sometimes they don't get what actually is the problem. So here, what we have to do is, in the classroom itself, we have to allow the learners to discuss the problem, because they don't know what actually is that problem. So better give them some time, so that the students among themselves, they discuss about the problem. And sometimes what happens is, when we have given the time to discuss the problem, they diagnose that problem properly, because in the discussion part, different opinions we will get. And the student, as a facilitator, we have to ask the students to identify the problem with the adverbs like why, how, and when. Because even in the Bloom's taxonomy also we will be using verbs, right? So those verbs also we can use and we can apply in the first stage where we will be identifying the problem. The second stage is exploring the pre-existing knowledge. So what, as a learner, how much they know about the problem, whether they have experienced this kind of problem in the earlier classes. So at the time of exploring the problem itself, the students, they have the knowledge or not. See, there is an unexplored place and learners are allowed to explore that place. As it is unexplored, wherever the student goes, it becomes explored for them. It becomes explored for them. But if already the place is explored and you have given the opportunity to the students to explore the place, so how they are exploring? So there is a lot of difference here. So that's why, as a facilitator, we should be having the knowledge about learners. When it comes to the learners, how much prerequisite knowledge they have about the concept, about the problem, about the situation, or whether they have the enough resources or not. So in the third stage, what they have to do is they have to generate certain possibilities. What is that possibilities here? Like maybe in the research, how we generate the hypothetical statements. Because if certain issues we can identify, certain questions can be defined. Sometimes certain questions can be explored while generating possibilities in solving the problem. That means already you have taken the problem and again you are generating one more problem to solve that. Because when you are solving the problem in a group, one individual member has pointed out that there is a problem exists in this particular problem within a problem. That means when instructor has given a problem, again students has identified another problem in that problem statement. So possibilities, which problem we as a learner, which problem we have to solve. So that possibilities, whatever the possibilities are there, so we as a learner, we have to encourage them, we have to motivate them to generate those possibilities. After generating the possibilities, any issues, because certain issues, certain questions cannot be answered. Certain questions cannot be answered because suppose a student has completed only the first semester, but to solve that problem, complete 1 year learning knowledge or knowledge is required to solve that problem. But when the student has completed only the first semester, he require with the level of that current knowledge, he cannot solve the problem. He will not be in a position to solve the problem. That's where the role of the instructor comes. Instructor should identify that kind of the problem with the current level of knowledge. The learner will solve the problem or not. So as an instructor part is here to ensure that they are learning with the level of the knowledge. and they are solving the problem, because through the problem solving only they are learning that particular concept. Self-study, another important stage when it comes to the problem-based learning. Self-study. Why is this self-study? Because most of the time instructors, we give lot of material for them to go through. Say for example, case study methodology. In the case study methodology, by going through the case, we can't solve the case. To solve that case, sometimes we'll be having a requirement of other additional information or resources. Sometimes we need to check directly with the company to get the information, latest information, or to confirm whether really that happened or not. So self-study, which definitely helps the learner to solve the problem as quickly as possible, and he can meet the requirements of the instructor. Re-evaluation, whether after following the 5 steps, I am trying to solve the problem, really this is the right solution for the problem or not, how we are going to evaluate. So we have to encourage the students, because in the traditional learning, what we are doing, we are conducting the examination, and we are evaluating the students' performance. But here, evaluation, how as an instructor, how we are evaluating the students' performance in solving the problem. So our expertise, right? So challenging questions, whether the learner has solved the challenging questions or not, whether the learner has understood the key concept that exists in the problem, whether the learner has encouraged the other team members in involving them in some study, or in doing some research, or in writing, or in identifying other problems. So these things we need to evaluate in the problem-based learning, especially when it comes to the evaluation. So application of the new knowledge. So in the process, if the learner has learned any new knowledge, so as an instructor, we have to encourage and motivate the student to apply that new knowledge. By solving the problem also, I am getting new knowledge only. By solving the problem also, I am getting new knowledge. Even if I want to solve the problem, I require some new knowledge. So in both the ways, application of new knowledge is required. Assessment, I can say that the final stage of the problem-based learning is assessment. As I told you in the initial stages, in the traditional learning, assessment is happening systematically in a systematic way. But when it comes to the problem-based learning, how we are assessing, whom we have to assess, what we have to assess, whether the procedure or new knowledge, or whether self-study or identification of the possibilities. So which one we have to assess? So assessment is a challenging thing in the problem-based learning. So as a part of the instructor, we have to give our reflection on the learning of the students. So how students have solved the problem, what they have learned. As a facilitator, we have to give our reflection on their learning process, because through that only they will come to know whether they have solved the problem in the right way or not, in the right approach or not, will come to know. And this process, that means identifying the problem, from the first step to the 8th step, this like this we have to continue until the problem has solved. So these are the very important steps you take any problem based learning methodology. We have to apply this particular procedure. These are the steps where we have to follow if we want to apply the problem based learning. So application instructor part, when it comes to the instructor part, suppose if we decide that instead of traditional learning or instead of case study based learning, instead of project based learning, if I want to apply this PBL, then the instructor has to consider certain points. Instructor has to consider that it is a student centered learning methodology. As an instructor, we have to give that kind of problems to the learner where they are in a position to solve. So don't test the students. Don't test the students every time, because if we give that kind of problems which are not solvable, which we can't solve, certain problems which we can't solve, but we can provide the solution, but those solutions may not be feasible to solve the problem. So don't test the learner when we are applying, because why we are applying the problem based learning, because this particular approach will help the students to learn and acquire certain skills. Okay? Interdisciplinary learning, group collaboration, very important. Instructor, from the point of the instructor, from the point of the learner also, PBL is by applying this PBL, we are encouraging the group collaboration. So collaborative learning is happening between the instructor as well as the learner, and between the learners also. So active learning is happening, right? And also we are giving the reflection. Instructor is giving the reflection to the students about how they have solved the problem, and critical thinking is happening, because we are asking the students to solve the problem. So student is thinking how to solve the problem, and through this thinking capabilities are enhanced among the students, and motivation is there. As instructor, as a facilitator, we are motivating the students to solve the problem by giving the support, by giving the resources, by encouraging the students to discuss, observe what other teams are also doing. So in that way we are motivating, and engagement is very high in the problem based learning methodology. So other indicators like retention, challenges, adaptability, technology integration, these are the keywords that we need to keep in our mind when we are applying the problem based learning. So these things should not miss in the problem based learning. Adaptability, when it comes to the adaptability also, earlier this pedagogy was adaptability was there only for the medical education, medical stream. But now if you observe, you take any stream of discipline, whether it may be management, environmental science, law, literature, arts, you take any stream of learning, this PBL can be applied. And technology, when it comes to the technology, we have online PBL model. That means the 7 steps, if you observe the 7 steps, the 7 steps is possible even in the online environment. So there are certain learning management systems where we can apply and also where we can assess. Rubrics we can give. Rubrics we can give for this particular problem-based learning for assessing the student. So that's the reason why technology integration. That's why we have online PBL model, hybrid model, right? Contingency model. These are all the contemporary models. The first four are traditional problem-based learning approaches, models developed, and the later stages as how the uh, education or learning, student learning process, there are a lot of changes are there in the pedagogies also. Still the research is happening continuously research is happening uh, uh, on these pedagogies. That's the reason I have to appreciate the Kristu Jayanti Kale. Why? Because rightly they have identified. Why? Because most of the times instructors, because some of our faculty only used to ask different pedagogies. So what is this pedagogy? Why we have to use it? Which situation we have to use? So adopting pedagogies, we can apply this problem-based learning on any stream. Only the thing is that what the instructor's role is very high in the PBL, and moreover, if any say dry subjects are there, if suppose engaging the student bit difficult in these subjects, means that in that kind of subject, if we apply and adopt this problem based learning, definitely we can observe that there will be a positive response from the learners. So these are the points which we need to consider if we want to apply the problem based learning. So if any questions and discussions, I am open. You can unmute. Ma'am.
Participants, the session is open for Q&A session. If you have any questions, you can ask to sir. Thank you, Manjunath sir. It was a really interesting and useful session. Now I request Professor Rajakamal CH to deliver vote of thanks.
Joy is the simplest form of gratitude. As we express our gratitude, we must never forget that the highest appreciation is not to utter the words, but to live by. Good afternoon, one and all present here. On behalf of entire Christian College, I deem it my privilege to propose vote of thanks on today's section of faculty development program. First and foremost, I would like to extend our sincere gratitude to our distinguished speaker, Dr. Gundupagi Manjunath, Principal, Reddy Institute of Management Science, Adoni. She shared her valuable insights, experiences, and wisdom on the problem-based learning. Sir, your presentation is not just informative, but inspiring, providing us with a new lens through which we can apply our teaching and learning. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you, sir.
I extend
Thank
my
the audience also participants. If they practice, definitely there will be a positive response from the learners also. I hope almost all the participants are from the different streams. All the streams we can apply this problem-based learning approach.
yes, sir, definitely, sir. Thank you, sir. I extend my sincere gratitude to respected Father J. Sweet Thomas, Financial Administrator, Christian College, for all the guidance and support. I would like to thank our beloved head of the department, Professor Vijay Kumar R, for his constant help and guidance that radiated a source of energy with us. Thank you, sir. I extend my sincere thanks to Program Coordinator Dr. R.P. Singh and other faculty coordinators of organizing committee for the successful conduct of the activity. I would like to express my deep appreciation for the presence of all the participants in this activity. Your involvement has been instrumental in making it a grand success. I trust this section has been enriching and productive for each and every one of us. I express my thanks to technical staff for extending their helping hand for the success of the event. Once again, I extend my gratitude to one and all. Thank you and have a great day. I remind.
Thank you, Rajakamal sir. Now I request admin to wind up the meeting.
Thank you, Manjunath sir.
Thank you.
Dear participants, tomorrow and day after tomorrow will not have the session. The next session will be on Monday. Okay. So tomorrow and day after tomorrow we'll not have the session. We'll have the session on 6th of November. 4th and 5th we don't have the session. 6th of November, again the same time, same Zoom ID will be shared. Thank you.